What I learned is successful people are willing to do what unsuccessful people are not. So I'm successful because I'm willing to do what you ain't willing to do. I'm willing to get up early. I'm willing to stay late. I'm willing to do it over again. And when I don't feel like doing it, I get up and I do it again. That difference between me and you. I'm gonna keep going when I don't feel like going. You wanna go as long as it's comfortable and convenient. But then you wonder why you ain't got what I got. You ain't going where I'm going.
Welcome to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. I'm your host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our other host and our owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton. How you doing, sir?
Always blessed and highly favored.
Yes, indeed. That's always great to hear. And we thank you all for tuning in to another righteous and holy episode of Closing the Gap Podcast. Look, Wilbur, man, we're getting ready for football season. And there's a lot of things going on, a lot of legislation coming down the pike, and NIL and all of these things are what's driving conversations as we prepare to see what's driving the people on the field, right? But then also in the midst of all of this, no matter how much we love to see the sport and love to see the kids play, what we see behind the line, what's driving everything is finances.
Yes.
Right. And no matter what it is or how it is, money is behind it all. And so we need to make sure that we are aligning the families correctly, that they can drive their wealth in the proper manner. And that's what we want to talk about today, is getting a head start on things. And now things are kind of switching to a bit, right? Especially when it comes to African American community and the wealth that can be generated from the student athletes that are going to college as a result of NIL. They can become the main breadwinners of the family.
Yes.
They can be the ones that set the family legacy up if things are done properly. And so we want to talk about that today, about how we can get realigned for a good head start coming from the NIL perspective.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, of course, NIL is a unique and a great opportunity. It is definitely a way to get a head start and, put our, kids and hopefully future generations in a better situation. Obviously, we know what we've been dealing with, and it's, ironic and kind of, what we're all about here on the podcast. Of course, trying to close the gap and what we can do to help, close the gap in economic inequality that we've experienced, here in the United States. And obviously, we can see that, we as a community are doing better economically than we probably, not than we ever have, because there's actually times in history where we've actually been more successful financially in greater positions. It's funny as it is coming out of slavery. If you go back to, the 1865 years, and, we were actually from 1865 over to the Great Depression, we're actually in a better financial position as a community than we are right now. When you look at the overall wealth that we had, because we had more ownership. We had the Black Wall Streets. We had all these different communities that were, self-sustained. Right now, we really don't have any or very few communities across the country that are completely self-sustained. And when I say self-sustained, I'm talking your own hospital, your own schools, your own bus stations, your own, supermarkets, and your own, movie theaters and tailors and dry cleaners and everything that you could think of being completely Black owned. So, we don't necessarily have that right now, but we are doing better financially from an income perspective. We are, have grown, but obviously we're still not at where we want to be. And the great thing about NIL is giving us a way and opportunity to somewhat fast track that process and start the process a little bit sooner as far as, gaining and attaining wealth, in our families and in our communities. We're still, far behind our, other counterparts and other ethnicities when it comes to the actual median wealth that they hold. And we're talking about almost a, easily 5-6 to 1 gap between us and, Caucasian community when it comes to the absolute dollar gap that we have from a asset, standpoint. So, being able to have NIL, as opposed to waiting until you're 24, 25, 26 to start earning income and have an opportunity at 17, 18, 19 for some of these young men and young women to go to college and be able to earn, 6 figures and more. That gives you an opportunity where, you can, put yourself and your family in a better situation where, before we were always kind of starting off a day late and a dollar short.
Yeah.
This is giving us opportunity to kind of flip that on its head to a certain extent, and kind of reverse that and reverse the field, so to speak. So we definitely want to make sure that we educate, our community
Yeah.
on how to, properly, maintain and manage the assets that we do have, coming to us. Because as those assets come to us, we want to make sure that we utilize them in a positive fashion. We want to make sure that, we're thinking about the end in the beginning. And of course, for a young man or young woman that is coming into these assets at 18, 19, 20 years of age, you're probably not equipped to make the best decisions. I was blessed to come from a good home, but at 18 years old, if, having $500,000, coming into me at that point in time, I still probably would have made some mistakes. I can almost guarantee I would have made some mistakes. I would have probably enjoyed myself a little too much. But this is why we have to educate ourselves as, elders and parents and overseers so we can help guide, our kids and the children in the right direction who are the beneficiaries and the recipients. And, one thing that I want our community to do is not to look at the money that these kids are making as reparations for themselves, but look at the money as an opportunity to be a blessing and push it forward to the next generation so everybody can start off ahead and not behind. See, a lot of times what's happening in the NIL community, for example, with a lot of athletes that we see is, we're having to pay it back versus pay it forward. We're having to go and, take care of mom, dad, auntie, uncle, grandma, granddad. And there's nothing wrong with paying it back to a certain extent. But we don't want to cripple the child's future and what they're working hard to achieve. And when they get older, they don't have anything because we've all paid it all back and having to take care of people that didn't take care of themselves. So, to the people that are under the sound of my voice, to the parents, and to the overseers, the NIL is not for you to, make up for what you've lost. It's not to replace what you didn't do. Now, there's nothing wrong with, you being properly compensated, as a parent, because of course, and me as a parent, I know the cost of having, kids that are involved in sports. I paid the insane prices to get into, some of the tournaments that, my AAU standpoint, the kids play in over the weekends. I've, been paying for the cleats and the gloves and the, all the shoes and the trainings and all the things that come along with, helping a young man or young woman become a better athlete and trying to give them the best that you possibly can so they can be the best version of themselves. So there's nothing wrong with, get a little recompense, for that. Or, nothing wrong with, covering your travel to go and visit and watch your kids play and, not having to necessarily come out of your pocket to do that because the kids are receiving income that can help facilitate that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you haven't planned for your retirement and then you look at your kids as a golden parachute, that's where we're not doing our future generations any real service because you're putting them back in the same situation that you were born into. Because one thing that I do understand as a former athlete, it does come to an end. And even though NIL is great and we want to maximize it, you can't stay in college but so long. And, like I say, they've changed the rules. And now you have, when I was in college, you had 4 years to play and 5 years of potential scholarship. And now you have 5 for 5. So you do have time. There's a 5-year window for a young man and young lady to go and to possibly earn. So that means that we need to have a plan on how we're going to maximize these dollars over the next 5 years. So when this young man or young woman graduates or moves on to the next phase of life, they have something to help them transition. They have something to cushion that fall because there's going to be a fall. Everybody that plays in college does not make it, to play professionally. So you want to make sure that they have a soft landing place to be able to go out and have a home and have a car and have an education to be able to transition into the workforce. Just imagine if, you had a $250,000 head start because of what you earned while you was in college and you earned, just say, $50,000 a year over that 5 years and you saved that $50,000, you invested, and when you graduated, you had a $250,000 cushion. Imagine, what kind of decisions you would have made that maybe would have been different or better than the ones that you made. Imagine the patience you could have had in the job market. Imagine, the job you would have went after if you knew that you had a cushion to fall back on. You didn't have to rush and take the first job that came your way.
Yeah.
So, when we do right with the resources that God blesses us with and with the funds that we come into contact with, it gives us more space for more opportunities, and it gives us the opportunity to really chase our dreams.
Yeah, yeah. And what I hear you saying, Wilbert, is it's a difference in the trajectory
Yes.
of where you're starting from to where you can get to. Right.
Yes.
That's always the case. You need space and opportunity to be able to get to the position that you desire to get to. And if you don't have enough space to take off, or if you're taking off from a place of a deficit, then it's going to take you longer to reach your destination when you're doing that. As you talked about the reversing field, and that's part of the issue, right?
Yes.
As you came into college not having this type of opportunity, you know what I'm saying, NIL, and not coming from a family that was well off in that extent, right? But family did as well as they could to put you in a certain position. And so you're able to take off as you've taken off. But now what we're talking about today is the kids have a greater opportunity to take off and have a different trajectory because of NIL. And therefore, even if the parents don't have any wealth, the child can be that main wealth earner. But where it gets problematic is the lack of knowledge. And even if a child has the opportunity to be that earner, if the parents are not willing to be educated about the process and having a plan of taking care of your finances and having a plan for retirement and understanding that the child needs to have a plan, and just because the money is coming in, well, we just want to take that money and spend it. No, you have to be patient.
Yes.
Because now you're going to pull that child backwards.
Yes.
Back to the situation that they're coming from, versus allowing the child to grow and be able to lead everyone out of the dungeon, out of the deficit that we're in. Because truth of the matter, and we're not pointing fingers at the families that may do these types of things, because we understand where we are when we're talking about monetary earning, and when we're talking about median household incomes and the difference for various ethnic groups. There's median white households, they have start out with around $285,000, as a median household income, whereas for African American families, the median household income dwarfs that. And we're looking at around $44,900 as a median household income. So we understand, and that's just the median.
Yes.
All right, let me pause there before I move to the next part. That's the median, right? That's the middle. So that says that there's another half that is well below $44,900, and that is poverty, if we're just honest about it. So we understand, coming from poverty, coming from low income status, that yes, when you see a certain level of money that's greater than what you already have, your eyes get big, and you think that this is going to get us out of the situation instantly. And what we need everybody to realize, families to realize, is that, and the children to realize, is it's not an instantaneous change that's going to come. The change still has to come through proper planning and having the correct information, having the right knowledge. The Bible says your people perish for the lack of knowledge. So you have to have access to the knowledge. And even King David, right, stored up enough for his son because he had the knowledge and he had the wealth. And so some families do have the knowledge, but they don't have the wealth. And then some families have the wealth, but they don't have the knowledge. And then some families lack both.
Yes. Well, you know, it's ironic that, you know, and you saying that, and one thing I want the parents to understand is that what you don't want to create is a period of resentment. Because one thing my father told me, and my father told me a lot of things over the course of my life, and blessed to have him, and I got to definitely give him a shout out because actually today's his birthday.
Okay. All right.
So definitely want to give dad a shout out and happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
But you know, he said one time, he said, "There's no relationship without reciprocation." And one thing I've learned is as you get older, your relationships with your parents and with your family changes. And for the kids that are entering into college right now, the relationship with the parents is now changing. And they're looking for someone to be that guide and to be able to help them and to be able to provide some sort of reciprocation with the assets that they're now being able to come in contact with. And this is where, you know, we all have to humble ourselves. Parents have to humble themselves, and they have to admit that when I don't know, to seek help. Because what you don't want to create is an environment where now you have this young man or young woman receiving NIL and receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars, especially over a period of years, and then they're looking to you for support and for guidance. And because you were too stubborn to seek help and get the right advice, you didn't provide the right direction, the right insight, the right formula on how to properly maximize. They gave it back to you, trusting you to do the right thing, but you weren't properly educated and prepared to handle it. Well, at some particular point in time, that child is no longer going to be a child. They're going to get older. And what you don't want to have happen is after that money is gone and they look back after their college career is over and they don't make it to the professional level, and now they got to start their life. You don't want to be looking back saying, man, what happened? Because that will create a level of resentment for the parents. And I don't believe that the parents had any malicious intent in most situations.
Right.
Most times they don't know what they don't know. And in most times they're just trying to get their head above water. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a way to do both. If you seek the right help, if you get the right guidance, if you take yourself out of the equation and you humble yourself and you go to your God and go to God and ask for direction. And when he sends you the help, receive the help.
Receive the help.
See, we can become a little bit stubborn when we get things that we've always wanted because we see that as the blessing. But what really is going to be the blessing is how you handle what's come to you. And if you handle those funds correctly, that gift will multiply. And all of a sudden you can help your family, but also you can still put your son or daughter in a good situation and have them investing. So when they finish college, they have something to fall back on. They have something to lean into and say, you know what, man, you know what? We were able to accomplish a lot. I was happy to be able to help my family, but I'm even more happy my family helped me.
Yeah, that's good. And so if you're a parent listening to us today, we want to implore you that if you have a son, a daughter, a friend of the family, or whoever it may be, that you reach out and contact Hamilton Wealth Advisors today. The athlete private office of Hamilton Wealth Advisors can give you a complimentary athlete and family Head Start session so that you can have a plan. And in order to do that, Hamilton Wealth Advisors needs to sit down with the whole family. Bring your mother, grandmother, cousins, everybody. Make it a family reunion type meeting with Hamilton Wealth Advisors, because the 4-year window that the child has for this earning potential needs to be talked about. It needs to be walked out, and it needs to have a definitive plan so that everybody involved and around can understand what the plan is, so that nobody has any questions or concerns later on, and everybody can get on board. And I need you to know that Hamilton Wealth Advisors is a registered investment advisor, and all the information of this program is educational and not an individualized tax, investment, tax, or legal advice. But contact us today, and we'll see you back on the next segment for the show.
What are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz is us. Us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. And today we're talking about Head Start, dealing with NIL and legacy and how you continue to build wealth. Now things are changing. NIL is introducing a new way to change the trajectory of families. But it's still important because the basics don't change. Having a written plan is still imperative for proper legacy planning. Having the wisdom and the knowledge of what you have is important. You know, always we think about the numbers, we think about the money is oftentimes the conversation. How much did they get paid? How much is my contract going to be, right? Even in the everyday world, it's about, you know, how much are they going to pay me? What's going to be my salary? What's going to be my wages? Yes. But in NIL, yes, that's important. But when we're talking about a head start, the head start is not about how much money, but the head start is about time. Yes. And I think oftentimes we fail to really value time like we need to. I know even for myself, younger, right? Coming from a household that didn't have a lot of finances. So when I started making money, I wasn't thinking about the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years down the line. And as a result of that, I lost the compounding that I could have been earning all of that time because my money perished with me due to a lack of knowledge. Yes. And that's what scripture says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. And so I perished in a sense, right? Part of my yesteryears died, right? They have no monetary value because I didn't have the proper information. But now what we do here at Closing the Gap Podcast is to come to give you the truth about wealth, to give you the information that you need so that you don't make the mistakes that I made, so that you don't make the mistakes that Wilbert made, and so that you are able to be all that God desires you to be and to have all that God desires for you to have. And so when we're talking about the head start being time, what we have to realize is that there's a new thing going on. And scripture even talks about it in Isaiah chapter 43. God says, behold, I do a new thing. So the new thing now is properly planning through NIL with the family so that not only the child can be well, but also everybody within the child's lineage, even the foreparents and the legacies that's going to be coming behind. Because oftentimes a 19-year-old is not thinking about their children and their children's children.
Absolutely.
But that's why we're coming here, is so 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, whatever the age is, you know, men and women, you're going to school, you're getting the NIL deals. We need you to contact Hamilton Wealth Advisors so that you can lay out the plan that you'll be able to live great now, but then also, man, you'll be able to live so much greater later. And also the generations that are coming after you will be able to live through the proper planning that's going to be provided. But then also, parents, we want to let you know we're not leaving you out of the planning. As Wilbur said earlier in the first segment, we understand the sacrifice that you gave to raise your child. We understand the sacrifice that you've done in making sure that your child made it to those practices and those games like they did. And you're looking for a return on the investment. Well, guess what? With the proper planning with Hamilton Wealth Advisors, we can ensure that a good plan gives you that possibility. Nothing is guaranteed, and we're not guaranteeing anything. But what we're saying is there's a higher probability if you contact Hamilton Wealth Advisors and get the plan laid out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's so much that goes into the opportunity that's being presented to these young men and young women, that the opportunity that they're being blessed with. And, we want to just kind of help them and the families understand what they're walking into. These young men and young women are not walking billboards. They're, walking CEOs, and we have to help them to understand that. And, as a business owner, which they are now, because this money is now, going to be paid to them. It's all earned income.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to set up LLCs and operate and function as a business, which means they're obviously going to have to pay taxes on these funds as well. And it's going to be imperative for the parents to help the kids understand, what that means. And if the parents don't understand, that's why we help them. They got to seek help. They got to seek some guidance. They have to seek, some additional assistance in helping to make sure that, that plan and that structure is right. So when that child receives the check, they understand that, what, I have to put away, 30 to 35% of this immediately. I have to understand that everything that I get, I'm not going to keep. All of this money ain't mine. So for those of us that have been in the workforce for a while, and those of you who are, W-2 employees, you become accustomed to, and you understand, when you get your check, there's already some deductions that have come out. There's taxes and Social Security and Medicare and these things. And the business owner is in a different position. You have to make the necessary deductions from your check in order to make sure that your taxes and Social Security and these benefits are paid for. So that's why it's so imperative to make sure that you're seeking that professional help and you're seeking the right kind of guidance to help the child understand, look, we have to plan first. It's not that we don't want you to enjoy the money, but it's a way we have to enjoy the money to make sure that we keep some money. So it's not about cold turkey. I don't believe in not enjoying myself, because you can't take it with you.
Yeah.
So we want you to enjoy yourselves, but not at the expense of your future. And even for the parents that are new to becoming business owners, which a lot of them are. Most of them have, like I said, have worked a job and been a W-2 employee, and that's great. But now that's a new responsibility that they have to take hold to, in understanding how do they properly plan and structure. How do I protect my child? Now that, my child is a target, for people who see on the news and hear, oh, your child is going to get $500,000 a year or $1 million a year, or they're receiving a lot of money because they play for XYZ University and they're a highly rated recruit. Well, now these young men have become a target for a number of people who have bad intentions. So we have to understand, well, how do we properly protect these kids? Because these are going to be new experiences. We understand, because we've been on this earth a little bit longer, we understand that everybody's not your friend.
Yeah.
And everybody doesn't have your best interests at heart. But this is why it's so important to sit down, as a family and have a, family plan. This is why we sit down at Hamilton Wealth Advisors and create the Athlete Enterprise Blueprint, which is the roadmap and the guide that can take us from here to kingdom come, that can guide us, and the family into areas of, of support. We have a game plan as to how we're going to support the family, how we're going to support grandmas and aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, how we're going to support the church, how we're going to support the charities, because, for these athletes, you are being paid. Well, you still need to pay your tithes. You are receiving an income now. This is different. So you still want to make sure that blessing keep coming. I can promise you, in my humble opinion, the best way to keep the blessings coming is to keep the tithe going. God blesses those who bless him.
Yes,
that's just the book. Don't blame the messenger. So I'm just one of those people that, I understand that, it's something about when I give the Lord that first fruit.
Yeah.
He always give it to me back in tenfold. So, we want to make sure that we create these habits now. So if we can build the plan and we build the budget and we build the operation and the structure, so now we know ahead of time, we can help keep down a lot of confusion, because we know there's a lot of demands being put on these young men and young women. And for anyone who's never been a college athlete, you're not going to understand the demands that come along with being an athlete. They tell you you're a student athlete. Well, the student part is subjective based on what school you go to. In most situations, you are an athlete first, and you are there to perform. And if you don't perform in a lot of places, you don't get the opportunity to perform again. You know, I don't know if most people understand this, but scholarships are not 4 or 5 year guarantees. They are year to year. And you have to re-sign that scholarship every year. So, you know, you can come into school and yes, be paid an NIL and be on scholarship 1 year and be gone the next. But the planning and the structure has to be there because, you know, there was things that we benefited from and that, you know, we took advantage of when we were in school because we didn't get an NIL, you know, such as, you know, Pell Grants, and, you know, a certain federal funding. So, you know, we were waiting for that Pell check to drop. You know, for people that come up my time, they know what I mean. Everybody was waiting for that time of year when that Pell Grant would drop. And of course, everybody would head to the mall and we go and spend our money on things that we didn't need. And everybody was at Walmart buying up all the goodies and the snacks. And you could tell the Pell Grant had just dropped because guess what? The meat department was empty. And of course, by the end of that semester, because we didn't manage that money properly in most situations, going back in there and it's ramen noodles and hot dogs to make it through the semester until we get that what? Until we get that next Pell Grant check. And then we live in the high life once again. Well, if we've been through that and we've experienced that, let's help our kids be in a better situation where they can be better managers of the assets that they're coming into. We want them to not have to have the highs and the lows. Let's teach them to be consistent in what they're doing. Let's teach them to create a budget. Because if we would have created a budget for ourselves, you know, earlier in life, we'd probably all be a lot better off. We'd probably be better stewards over our assets because we can all look back and like, man, if I knew then what I knew now. Well, with these young men and young women going into this situation, as the family, let's help make sure they're not in that position where they look back saying, man, if I knew then what I knew now. Man, if I had done this, then I would have done that. Man, if I would have been educated and informed, I would have done a better job, you know, with the blessing of the NIL that I received. So, you know, that's what we're trying to prevent here. And at the end of the day, when we know better, we do better. And we want to make sure that, you know, as a family, as individuals, you know better so you can inform these athletes, you can help educate them. And we understand you can't save everybody.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, we understand that, you know, people are going to live their life and, you know, some people are going to make mistakes. And honestly, I understand that some people are meant to be examples for other people. You know, sometimes people are meant to be the example that you need to see so you don't do certain things. But if we can have more than the fair share to manage these assets properly, this is the head start that we can help to try to close some of that gap that we have that is being created by our wealth in our community versus what other communities have. Because they're getting that head start and they're receiving an inheritance. Because they're innately based on certain, shall we say, inequalities in hiring practices and things of that nature. Certain, and of course, between the redlining and the things that are going on in this country's history and how they've, you know, benefited from getting maybe better rates on cars and loans and houses and everything else. So we have the assets to put ourselves in a better situation and, you know, have better credit and all these things. Now it can help close the gap and put us in a better situation to where now our families can start off ahead and we can start paying it forward. So the next generation can take a step back and not rush into doing what they have to do. They can take a step back and take their time and do what they want to do. Yeah. You know, when you do what you want to do, now you're moving a lot more freely. You're thinking more clear. You're able to chase a dream. You're able to hear God. We hear God the least when things around us are moving the most. You know, and usually when it's moving the most is when we got the most bills circling around us and we have the stresses of life. And if we can just help solve and close this financial gap and just take that problem off the table, and that allows you to sit a little bit more patiently and hear a little bit clearer. Now you can talk to God a little bit more and you can say, hey, God, what would you have me to do with this blessing that you've given us? What would you have us to do with the resources that we have? So these are the conversations we need to be having. But when we're having to pay off debt and pay off bills with what we're receiving, we're never getting to the place with, God, what would you have me do with this money? God, what would you have me do with this blessing? We're being forced to do certain things. So this is why it's so important. This is why we come on here. This is why we do the show. This is why we've been talking about, you know, planning and writing it down and making it plain last year. This is why this year has been about alignment and accountability. Because if the parents can get right, and now the kids can possibly be the springboard into a future generation that has and lives in excess and not that just enough or barely making it. Now the mindset can change for our community as a whole. Now, when I have enough and you have enough and everybody has enough around us, it's a lot easier for us to talk about partnering up. Because if you're not worried about how to pay your bills and I'm not worried about how to pay mine, I'm not looking to take from you to take care of me. We're both on sound, stable footing, so we can just figure out how we can push forward together and we can make this world a better place.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And all of that is relative to time, right? You got, what are you taking the time to inform yourself of? Are you taking the time with God to hear from God? And as I said earlier, the scripture that talks about in Isaiah 43:19, it says, "Behold, I do a new thing." The scripture says, "I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." Right? A way in the wilderness, meaning that as the trees and everything, you can't see through that. Now through NIL, God is making a way through that wilderness in the families, that your child has your DNA and certain athletic prowess now where you couldn't see how you were going to make it for the next few years and you couldn't see yourself retiring. Now God has made a way in the wilderness through your child now that your child can go and still have fun, right?
Yes.
I think that's the key too, is understanding that while we're talking about the child being able to earn and being able to take care of the family, the sport or whatever the young lady or young man plays, they can still have that fun.
Yes.
Right? And that's the part about planning, is when you have a plan in place, you don't have to worry about whether or not your mother is going to be okay.
Absolutely.
Your father is going to be okay. Your little brother, sister, cousin, grandmother, whoever it is in your family is going to be okay, right? Because you have a plan in place, right?
Yes.
I remember watching a special with Allen Iverson, and he said that was part of the problem. He had remorse when he left home and he was sitting in the dorm and he didn't have to worry about the power being cut off. He had AC, heat, he had food, you know what I'm saying, at school, but then he was concerned his parents back home didn't have what he had, right? So he had remorse about being in school and felt guilty that he had left his parents in that situation. And then now what we're saying now is that type of wilderness, God is making a way through that.
Yes.
That type of deserted situation, God is making a way through that. But you have to take the time, listen to God, and listen to the people that God is speaking through to you. And we believe that God is utilizing us here at Closing the Gap Podcast to speak to you now, to give you this information in this show, so that you can come and get more information about how to lay out the plan specifically for you and your family. Because the thing about it too, Wilbert, is every NIL deal is not the same. And every athlete is not going to earn the same amount.
Yes.
So while we're talking about this, we're not saying that everything is going to be the same, but what we're saying is that you do need to have a conversation to lay out a plan of what things look like for your family. Because there are some families, right, that are above that median income of $44,900.
Yes.
There are some that are right at that median income of $44,900, and there are some that are at different levels beneath that, right? And so wherever you are on that spectrum, Hamilton Wealth Advisors can lay out a plan, and the plan that Hamilton Wealth Advisors gives you will be the plan that God has guided them to give, right? That they're going to sit down with you, and nothing is going to be done that is outside of the realm of prayer and the wisdom and guidance of God. And then also what Hamilton Wealth Advisors is going to do is they are going to do things that are according to the laws that they have to abide by. That's the other thing that you can know, that being a fiduciary They are guided by laws that they are governed by. So you don't have to worry about, them trying to take advantage of you. You have a recourse, you have protection. But if you don't contact us, you're out there in the cold, you're stuck in the wilderness, you're stuck in a desert situation. And that is not where God wants you to be, because God is doing a new thing. And we'll see you right back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. I am Pastor Eddie Richardson here with Mr. Wilbert Hamilton, the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors. And we are talking today about the Head Start and dealing with NIL and the potential that our young men and young ladies have the earning potential to build a legacy for their future families, but also for their current families, for mothers, brothers, sisters, grandmothers, fathers, nieces, nephews, as long as it is planned properly. Why is this important? Well, because the thing is, we often talk about the money, but what the Head Start really is time. The Head Start is time. Don't worry about how much, but make sure that you plan what you have now, because you can't beat the compound interest that you can gain. Thing about it, retirement age is usually around 65. And so when you take a 19-year-old, that means that the 19-year-old has 46 years until they get to retirement. And if they utilize these 4 to 5 year opportunity of NIL, plan it properly, then there's a high potential that they can have a great amount of wealth built up for themselves and be able to take care of everybody that's around them. Because Roth IRA contributions, are something what comes out tax-free, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So making that investment, right? Then also at the age of 19, you're at a different bracket. This is the longest runway to earn wealth that you'll ever have, and having this type of earning potential at this age, is something that we haven't really seen in our community before.
No.
So we want everybody to take advantage of it, but then in taking advantage of it, the only way that you can properly take advantage of it is having the proper information. Everybody has to carry their own weight, carry their own water. Correct. Everybody has their own burdens to bear, but you can make burdens lighter for others if you know how to carry your burden properly.
Yes.
It's just like a lifeguard, right? A lifeguard knows how to swim for themselves first, but then they are trained on how to swim well enough to carry the weight of a drowning swimmer. They know how to carry that burden. And so what we want to do, what we're talking about in this whole show, is really about the Head Start for kids having NIL, not only to swim for themselves, but how to become lifeguards, how to be able to carry for somebody else. But the thing about the lifeguard, Wilbert, is the lifeguard doesn't harm themselves while they're swimming and carrying, right? They know how to load that distressed swimmer up onto their body in a way that they can bring them back by utilizing the water as well as a means to get back to the safe shore. And that's the thing about it, is we want to utilize the money just like the lifeguard uses the water as a means that you don't have to carry the burden. You do have to grab, but you know how to utilize the money to get everybody back to where they need to be and on a solid, safe shore that everybody can be able to stand on their own.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's one of those things, and I think a lot of times when, we talk about the planning and we talk about the art of delayed gratification, especially for me, as an advisor, I think, one of the first things that a lot of people hear is, I won't be able to do some things for myself. They're thinking I'm gonna be, well, if I'm doing everything for everybody else and I'm planning for the future, what do I get to enjoy today? And I tell them all the time, I said, well, the plan is not to stop you from being able to enjoy yourself today. The plan is to make sure that you can also enjoy yourself tomorrow as well. Because, there's a way to utilize the NIL and to utilize, all the opportunities that you're provided and to properly plan and structure and, do the tax strategy and planning that goes into, the financial planning of working with someone who's in this particular situation, dealing with the NIL that's being received. And there's ways of utilizing them and still being able to get the car that you want to have, but doing it in a way where, we create some kind of deduction for it, by personally through a business or through some type of LLC that you're going to have. And, the utilization being, for business purposes and whatnot, because you are now a walking business. So, understanding that there's a way to do everything that you want to do without giving up your future. We want you to be able to enjoy yourself, but it's how often, how frequently do you enjoy yourself? You don't need 10 chains. Enjoy just one. You don't have to be 2 chains. Just want you to have a chain. Yesterday you had no chains. Now you want all the chains. So just understanding that too much of anything can be a bad thing. Understanding everything in moderation. And I think when kids understand that when they hear it, they say, okay, well, I'm not trying to take away your fun. I'm not trying to take away your enjoyment right now, but I'm just trying to help you be in a position where you can buy a chain every year for the rest of your life. So what would you rather have? And when you talk to them, when you ask them, say, would you rather just be able to buy a chain for the next 4 years, 5 years while you're playing sports? Or do you want to be able to buy a chain every year for the next 40 years? And when you put it to them that way, they say, you know what? Okay, well, I think I would rather be able to, well, if you want to do that, well, this is what we need to do. This is how we need to plan. This is how we need to structure and strategize. You can still get a chain today. We're just going to hold off on that chain that you wanted to get for tomorrow. And we're going to practice the art of delayed gratification. And we're going to put some rules in place, and we're going to make sure that we have a payroll system in order to take care of the family. We're going to make sure that we, create a budget and a strategy and a structure around the money you have coming in that says, how much money can we give to Sick and Shut In? How much money can we give to aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, cousins, friends of the family? Because people are going to have their hand out. And that doesn't mean that you always have to hang up. That just does, but it does mean that we have to be judicious in how and what we give. And we want to be in a position where you're working, especially with someone like me. I tell my class all the time, I have no problem being the bad guy. I have no problem telling your friends and family no. We're going to create a budget. We're going to create a system of how we help, but we're going to have an amount that we can help up to. And then after that, I'm sorry, but we can't do anything. We have to wait until the next cycle comes through, and then we can go and give help. We're not going to take out of your future pot to take care of somebody else right now need. That doesn't make any sense. We can't save you and save them at the same time. We got to save you first. So it's like when you get on that plane, they tell you put your mask on first. We got to make sure that we create the plan that gives you sustainability for the rest of your life. Now, once we do that, now we're going to take the next step of making sure mom and dad are taken care of as much as possible. And then we can move to grandmom and granddaddy, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, friends of the family. So there's got to be an order of operation here. You can't do everything you want to do all at the same time. It's just not humanly possible. But, when we receive large sums of money, we want to do it all at once. We want to buy the house. We want to buy the car. We want to buy the chains. We want to help this person and that person. And want to give here and give there. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to do these things. But it's a way in which we have to structure, plan, and strategize in order to be able to do everything without putting yourself in a bad position. So that's what we want to have and help the community understand, is that not right now doesn't mean no. It just may mean that we need to plan and prepare, and it may be next week, it may be next month, it may be next year. So don't take offense if it's not right now, because sometimes God, on purpose, doesn't give you what you want right now, because he knows that you're not who you need to be right now. And if you get something that you want and you're not the person that you need to be, it's probably not going to go right for you anyway. So sometimes God is using the person that you want something from to be the very one to push you into who you need to be by telling you no. By telling you know what, you're not prepared. You're not ready. And this is why we want to have the family involved. And this is why we do involve the family in our athlete enterprise program. When we do put together the plan for the families, because we want to have a family foundation.
Yeah.
We want to have a rhyme and reason as to why we help and who we help. We want to have some guidelines, much the same way the church has some guidelines on how they help, how they give. You know, everybody can't just run to the church and say, I need my rent paid. You know, but occasionally the church will pay some rents. You know, everybody can't just run to the church and say, pay my power bill, pay my water bill, pay my gas bill. Now, it happens all the time. And there are some people who the church blesses and and shares benefits with.
Yeah.
Sometimes do the people deserve it? Probably not. A lot of times they do. But what the one thing I do understand is that the church does not place it upon themselves to worry about what the person does with it once they get it. It's their job to give it if they have it, to give it to that person in need. So we have to be the overseers. As a family, we have to have the plan and structure and strategy in place that says, oh, we're going to be the committee that determines if we're going to give this blessing, because you don't want to be trying to bless everyone because everyone is not deserving of a blessing. You have to understand that, you know, it's your responsibility to make good decisions. It's your responsibility to make sure that you have your bills paid. And if you don't have a budget, but you've given your money out to everybody that was in need, when you need something, the people you gave it to, 9 out of 10, can't give it back. Especially if they were mismanaging prior to coming. So this is why we tell the families and we tell the communities and the individuals we work with, say, look, we're not against helping. We want to help as much as we possibly can. You know, we're all blessed to be a blessing. So I believe in giving back. I believe in paying those tithes. I believe in, you know, paying it forward. But at the same time, we have to be smart about this. We have to make sure that we keep the main thing the main thing. We have to make sure that rent, lights, food, everything's paid for, taken care of, taxes, all these things are handled. And now once the necessities are taken care of and we've budgeted out and we know that we have an extra $5,000 a year in the budget to donate, to give. Now, as people come forth and we see fit, we can now bless those family members and friends of the family without crippling them. Because the last thing you want to do is cripple someone into always needing you. Because like they tell you when you go to the zoo, if you feed the animals, they're going to always come back. So don't feed certain animals if you don't want to have them running behind you at the zoo.
Yeah. And so, and in a different sense, love, right? So how you feed those that you love.
Absolutely.
You care for them, right? And love is not a line item, but love needs to have a line item in the budget.
Sure.
Because love can be confusing sometimes when you're getting those phone calls, text messages about the needs that loved ones have. You feel as though you have to come to every beck and call that they have. But with proper planning, proper budgeting, you can put your love offering in a line item of your budget to how much you are going to love somebody financially.
Yes.
All right. Every month, every year, whatever that is. And when that person spends up their love money, their love offering that you are giving to them for that month, then that's it for that budget, right?
Yes.
And so when you have a proper plan like that, you can become more comfortable in doing that. Because the thing is this, you have to realize what you're striving to build. And that's the thing with NIL and what we're talking about and having a head start and having the years on end is that when you have a goal in mind and you have a plan to get to reach that goal, then you can become addicted to building the goal And there's nothing wrong with a healthy addiction. And that's what we want to promote is healthy addiction, doing things in the proper way, proper manner, that now you realize some of these people that are calling me are, really interfering with me reaching my goal.
Yeah, I tell them all the time, love me, don't need me.
Yeah. So, it's no different than in sports. When you find somebody and you're trying to get to the end zone and you had defenders in your way, yeah, it may be a defender that it may even be your family, but sometimes your family is not on your team in certain points. Sometimes they're coming against you more than they're helping you.
Yes.
So we need everybody to be on the same team. We need family members blocking for the young people that have the NIL deal so that they can end up scoring the goal. Because here's the thing, what we're talking about is a starting line, right? We understand, we're talking about numbers and we're talking about the age. What we want everybody to understand is we're not talking about NIL is going to make everybody rich. But what it will do is it will change the starting point that everybody goes from, right? That now, but it can potentially make you rich, right? That is a potential. But what we do know is the earning potential can change where you start from. So it can take you out of poverty and put you in a middle class, possibly, right? We're not saying that it will, but with the proper planning, these are the type of things these are the probabilities that are available to you as a result. And in doing that, you can build some different assets, right? Because everything is about having assets, having proper assets based on who you are and what your goals are in life. Tax reserve accounts is an asset that can be built through that. And when I think about a tax reserve account, I think about David when he gathered all of the material for his son Solomon to be able to build a temple. All right, Solomon didn't build a temple, but because of his wisdom and knowledge and his relationships with all of those other nations around and people that served under him, he was able to gather all of the material that was needed for his son to be able to build an immaculate temple for God in 7 years. Why? Because by the time Solomon came along, Solomon had a different starting point. He didn't have to do like his father.
Yes.
He didn't have to fight the battles that his father had. He didn't have to defeat the enemies that his father had defeated. His father had already defeated all the enemies.
Yes.
To the point that when Solomon came along, Solomon didn't have to fight. Solomon had peace that surrounded him. And not only did he have peace that surrounded him, he had the wealth that was needed to be able to build and to be able to do what his father was not able to do. And that's somewhat of a reserve account, meaning that you have what you need that you don't get taxed. See, David had to fight because everybody was like, look, you the great king, we want what you want. And that's kind of how the IRS does us, right? It comes at us and says, hey, you know what I'm saying? You're doing a lot of earning. You need to give us some of that. But when you have the reserve account, now you're not worried about the IRS. You have your plan laid out in place that you built that wall to the point that whatever the IRS needs to be paid, you already had that structure. And when we speak about that, we want to make sure that you contact the proper tax professional to get the information that you need for the proper planning for you to have what you need to take care of whatever your tax structure is. But then also you need another asset of operating cash, and that's what also Solomon had. He had operating cash. He had all of the wood, all of the gold, all of the silver, all of the bronze that was needed to build the temple. And that's why Solomon was the wisest and richest that we saw in the Bible. Not just because of him, but because of what his father had laid up for him in the beginning. And so this is what can happen through NIL. This is the head start that Solomon had as a result of his father. And this is the head start that these children can lay out going forward as well. But then also they can graduate with a degree without any debt. So not having any debt and a degree is something that as we always were told growing up, if you get your degree, nobody can take it away from you. And if you get the proper knowledge, nobody can take it away from you. Nobody can push you backwards, because you know where you are, you know who you are, and you know whose you are, and you belong to God. And because you belong to God, you need to take the head start that God is providing for you through the information that we're providing here at Closing the Gap Podcast. And so look, we'll see you at church, or we'll see you at your next financial consultation.